Hello, Renissa.
Hey, Anthony.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh,
I am so happy we're doing this. Sorry.
Yeah, we haven't been talking for the past like 15 minutes, We didn't talk about this before. Yes, so Scott and perhaps anyone else who's listening to this, we are well read. Both of us are well read in all the class discussions. But we would like it to be organic. We didn't plan this out like super hardcore. So God knows what's gonna happen.
Yes, we want this to be as creative as possible.
Yes. Yes, we want this to be creative as possible. I feel like as long as the discussion is good, the whole thing should be fine. Yeah. So let's get it going. Do you want to hear my leading questions?
Okay, let's go with
Okay.
those.
All right. So this is something about you were saying in class, and I'm sort of thinking about it. I have
Ooh.
three leading questions. I know I'm not a man who usually has questions.
No, you don't have leading anything.
I know I don't. I'm not a leader. I'm sort of like the guy who just hangs out. All right. So, what is colonialism? Can you give me a definition, like your own definition?
What is colonialism?
Yes.
Okay, colonialism to me is the conquer and subjugation of a people.
Okay. Regardless of
You okay?
yeah, the wind just picked up. Okay. Regardless, so we're talking like race, ethnicity,
Regardless of race,
nationality.
ethnicity, nationality, colonialism could also happen between the same race, same ethnic identity.
Can you give me an example?
So, for example, India and Pakistan. So, India and Pakistan is separated by the British, right? And those people are one people. They're divided by religion. I'm using quotation, but they are brothers and sisters, and they try to conquer each other.
So India and Pakistan.
India and Pakistan.
The same origin?
They have the same origin.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yes, because so what happened in 1942, is it 1942, around 1947, around there, Indian independence. So before India had to get independence, the British separate them into two countries.
Oh, okay.
To stop the violence, but they were responsible for the violence because they pit them against each other based on religion.
Okay.
So India was the Hindus went to India's, and India and the Muslim went to Pakistan. So that's the best example I can give you. I can also give you an example based on skin color. And maybe you're familiar with this. So in my culture, which is well, I mixed with a bunch of stuff, but I'm gonna look at like some African American, not American, Caribbean culture. How you're treated depends on the color of your skin. That's a form of colonialism.
Yeah.
Yes.
I had no idea Indian and Pakistani culture was related.
They are related. They're one origin.
I guess they probably, all of us are related at some point, but
yeah,
I had no idea there was a direct relation there. Okay. All right. So again, colonialism is the conquering of another group of,
and subjugation
of another group of people. Okay. All right. So my second question, which directly relates to what you said in class, is post-colonialism real? Why or why not?
So this is going into my thesis topic, and the topic is post-colonialism even possible? And the answer, it's not.
It's not.
It's not.
Post-colonialism is not.
It's not still in possible. Colonialism? We're still in colonialism.
All right.
And give me I'm going back to that because so I just referenced race, right? Sure. So when colonialism happened, They brought people from Africa to America. They went to the Caribbean. They brought people from all over the world. They conquered them. They subjugated them. These people assimilated, right?
Yes.
What is assimilation now? Assimilation is...
So the people they brought over assimilated.
Yes, African Americans assimilate. I'm going to use that. Okay. Native American assimilate. And what assimilation is taking on that colonialism, taking on that culture, putting it onto yourself, right?
Yeah, but don't you think that involves a sort of like forced, like, what's the discrepancy between I chose to assimilate versus like I was brought over here and to survive I had to assimilate?
It's a big discrepancy, and that's why postcolonialism is not possible, because we're still thinking with colonial mentality. How is it possible if we're still embodying colonialism in our everyday life, if it's forced or not? We're still doing those things.
How are we embodying colonialism?
So I'm going to go back to India now again, because I think it's the most blatant example. So what India is trying to do right now, and it's in the news, is they are trying to make an India for Indians, for Hindu Indians, right? It doesn't matter that there's Jewish people in India. It doesn't matter there's Muslim people in India. They want everyone to look the same, wear the same clothes, right? And speak the same language.
Make India great again.
Yeah. Yes, if that's not colonialism, I don't know what is. Right?
Okay.
So how can we be in post-colonial? How can we teach post-colonialism when we're still in colonialism?
Okay. So here's my sort of, and I don't know anything about this. I'm not challenging you. I'm trying to figure this out.
It's okay.
So like the greatest quote unquote empires are like the British Empire, the French Empire, in recent times, the French Empire, the Spanish Empire, and probably the American Empire.
America is an empire. It is an empire.
I think America is probably still the only empire
that's left.
Yeah,
yes,
that's left. And so, is it, I don't want to say, is it fair, but is it like, are we still in colonialism if America is the only empire left and all the empires have fallen? Or, are these like smaller sort of, because let's be realistic. I don't think you could do an empire again. Like you'd have to commit some war crimes, and like NATO, I mean, unless you're a NATO country, but like...
Well, doesn't that take us into one of our readings, Guantanamo? And if you would ask the Puerto Ricans, right, they would say it's still an empire because they're suffering. Recently in the news,
the Virgin Islands.
Yes, they were saying we're taking away Social Security from Puerto Ricans because they're not paying taxes, but Puerto Rico is it's part of the United States. It's a territory of the United States. So is Guam. So how do you differentiate that?
Jamaica a territory of us?
No. Jamaica is independent. So it's the U.S. Virgin Islands, Guam, Puerto Rico. I think there's a few others in there that I'm probably mistaken.
I feel like there are, yeah.
So, but yes, if you ask those people, they're still an empire. They're still subjugated to the United States. They still have to assimilate. They're still in colonialism. So colonialism exists, right?
Okay. All right. So I have one more question, but you mentioned Guantanamo, so we can pull out Guantanamo. If you want to start with that conversation, or...
So we could start with the poems from Guantanamo, and then we can lead into Dr. Jared Del Rosso articles on force feeding and waterboarding. So you saying that empires, tortures, and things like that, if we look at that way, that the United States is doing that in Guantanamo, right?
Sure, yeah.
So they're not doing it on US soil, but it's colonialist behavior. They're taking these people and they're taking them to Guantanamo and they're force feeding, they're waterboarding them. But yet when it comes out, they're saying, well, it's not really happening. These people, they lie. Well, how are they lying?
Right. I think that's what colonialism is. It's, you're going to another country and you're sort of just taking it over. You're just doing whatever you want with it.
So yeah, it's not colonializing of a place, but it's colonializing of a people, right?
Right.
So,
It's colonizing of a place too.
well, yeah, Guantanamo in a sense, but it's in the sense it's under the United States. And I say colonialism of a people because the treatment of these people that are interned in Guantanamo is atrocious, it's barbarous, it's pure barbarism, right?
Right.
Let's just put it like that. And then the
Right.
United States government is like, well, it's us or them. That's what I'm getting, the vibe that I'm getting. And then I look at these poems from Guantanamo, and as I'm reading the introduction by what's his name, Mark. Oh, I forgot his last name.
Mark Falkoff.
Yeah, Mark Falkoff,
Mark
right?
Falkoff.
And Mark Falkoff, who did a great job, right? He is talking about these poems, how they're a hallmark and they invoke Islamic terms and the word Allah, which for some American that's a trigger word, the book of God and the messenger and Islam. And I look at that and I say, well, if I'm not talking about academically, if the average man on the street, right? If they see this book and they see these words, would it be a trigger? Would they want to read it and learn about the atrocities that these people are facing? Or are they going to go, well, it's them or us and they're doing the right thing? Like the congressman was justifying waterboarding and force feeding, saying like he's literally denying the claim in the allegation, simply saying it's untrue, that no torture occur, and that these people are not credible. So then does it come down to the color of someone's skin? Does it come down to not understanding suffering, or just choosing to turn a blind eye is just what we do to preserve empire, to preserve colonialism, to go back to those colloquially that we're using, right?
Yeah, I think I'm going to be honest. I'd heard of Guantanamo before, this book and then poems of Guantanamo. But if you had asked me like who was there and like what it was, like I had no idea. Like I didn't know what it was. Like, and reading all this stuff, and then oh gosh, we had that guest speaker whose name I can't even remember.
Yeah, Jared La Rosa, I think is his name. Maybe we're pronouncing his name differently.
Yeah, that sounds about right. But he was talking about that incident where all those pictures came out.
Yes.
And I remember looking at those pictures and like reading the descriptions. Like it was sick. Like it was dark, twisted sort of stuff. And I think, I think it speaks to the fact that like, I think skin color has something to do with it. I think this is more religion than anything. I think Americans still have this sort of, oh, this guy's Muslim, God knows what he's up to. God knows what he believes in. Right. But I think it also goes back, and I think we see this in all of the works, no matter what culture you're talking about. And you see this especially in De Las Casas. You put people in power and they'll abuse it. They'll just abuse the shit out of it, especially if they're operating under this supposition that it's like, these people aren't people, or like these people aren't civilized people. These people are, heathens or atheists or I don't know, polytheists or whatever, right? Whatever justification you have for torturing and like burning people alive. And the Guantanamo thing, like, they were they would like be forced to like wear underwear that like people had like shat and like pissed in, right? and they made them do all kinds of like weird shit. They like beat them so bad that like they couldn't hold in pee anymore. Like, what's that about? That's insane.
Goes back to how humane are we? And I have this image that popped in my head as you're talking about, like, because we always go, the alien, like the tiny little green guy, right?
Yeah.
And they make all these movies about the tiny little green alien that comes down and want to take over. Well,
Yeah.
aren't we those people going into places and doing these atrocities and then justifying it? Well, you have something that we want, right? What Bartholomew de las Casas in the Columbus Journal, right? Columbus, and I'm probably going to get in trouble for this, Columbus didn't do a lot of the atrocities he's accused of, but he's the catalyst for it, right? I mean, that's how I always look at him, that he's the catalyst for a lot of these wrongs that were committed in South America, the Caribbean. I mean, he didn't step foot in North America, so I'm not gonna even touch that. But South America and the Caribbean, he is the catalyst for these atrocities. Yeah. So, sorry. So I had a question for you. What made you want to like familiarize yourself with Bartholomew de las Casas work?
I mean, I have a natural affinity for history. I really like history. I'm just really interested in it. But also, I think as an American, I'm largely ignorant of the history of my own hemisphere. And I'm sure like someone like Frankie or something could speak, or even you could speak to this. It's like when you grow up in America, you don't learn a lot about anything outside of America. You maybe learn a little bit about Canada, but like, you don't learn that like California, New Mexico, and Nevada, and Texas, and Arizona used to be part of Mexico. Like you don't learn that all kinds of like, I took a Native American literature class in my undergrad, and my mind was blown. I shouldn't say my mind was blown, but like I felt stupid because my teacher at one point was like, I didn't say it, but she was just talking like, all right, so like I think you all should know that not all Native Americans spoke the same language, and often they couldn't understand. Like if you weren't in like the region, right? If you were like a Native American in Chicago, you couldn't understand the language in Nevada or Utah, or you know what I'm saying? And that was like one of those moments where I was like surprised, but also like when I thought about it, I was like, that kind of makes sense. Like why would you? Because there are hundreds of tribes, so it's stuff like that. And it's stuff like, in Nevada, before I took that class, I couldn't name 3 Native American tribes. And then after that class, I was like, there are like 15 streets, like major streets in my city that are named after Native American, Cheyenne, Hualapai, Navajo Street, like all of these streets that are like, I'm like, oh, these are Native American names. So I think what drew me to that is like, I'm always interested in Central American and South American history, because I think it's not largely taught to me as an American public education student, and even in college. Like unless you seek it out, you could go through all of college and not know. Like you just have no idea.
That is fascinating, because like everyone wants to Americanize, right? Everyone to become Americans with their cell phone and their computer, and we mimic you with the hip hop and all that stuff. But one thing I will say about where I come from and the British education, because I kind of grew up in colonialism and the British education, is that we are not taught American history, we're taught world history. We're taught about the British and their great empire and how they conquered the world and everywhere they go. But through that, you have to learn about South America and the Caribbean and why you're there, right? So for me, when I told you, I read the Bartholomew de las Casas like when I was like 10, 11 years old. It was in tandem with like the Swiss family Robinson Crusoe. Because it's like you have to learn these things. You have to be able to name all the countries in South America and the capital, and you have to understand that how they're so different from you. And that goes into another one of our reading, which Dr. Howard gave us, which is Caliban. And I don't know if you had a chance to look at Caliban, but Caliban basically took, do you know the Shakespeare, the Tempest?
Vaguely.
So in the Tempest, right, there's this this man called Caliban, and he is a slave of Prospero, right? See where this is going? So Prospero taught Caliban.
Is this the Gladiator with Russell Crowe?
No.
Okay.
So Prospero taught Caliban language to read and write, right?
Yeah, sure.
But Prospero told his daughter that they cannot survive without Caliban. So Caribbean people from South America, we identify as Caliban. We're taking your language, right? And we're going to use it for our own purpose. We're going to rebel, right?
Sure.
You can't do without us, but we can do without you.
Sure.
See how it's going? So in a sense, it's like we're searching for identity. And that goes back to.
Wait, are you talking about Americans, or are you talking about who's searching for identity?
South Americans, Caribbean
South Americans.
people.
Okay.
Right? Because the thing with South Americans, Caribbean, we embody colonialism, right? Even though we're a country, our countries are all different and we're full of rich history. It always, we got to tie back to Europe some way, somehow. Sure. We don't have anything if we can't trace an ancestry to Europe.
Sure.
Right? It's something we've done. And it's like we take that colonialism and then we embody it, and we come to this country and we look at African American and we go, well, you're wasting your opportunity, right? You should have done this, this, and this, not understanding their struggle, right? So the
Central and South Americans are not understanding the African American struggle.
Exactly. Because we're embodying colonialism. We are like, we deny Blackness, right? Even though it's part of us, it's part of who we are.
Especially
right?
Like Haitians.
Yes.
Sure.
So
yes.
we just take this colonialism and we embody it, and then we throw it back on other people and go, well, we're better than you. And for example, and I'm saying that because it's true, it goes back to like the color of the skin and the hair and all that, like, and how we take opportunity. Because one thing is like it's a myth, a lie that's been perpetuated by colonialism that Africans are lazy. I don't know where that comes from.
I mean, I'm lazy as fuck. So,
but you're half, so it doesn't count. Half of you is lazy. So so I don't know where that come from, but then that stereotype gets perpetuated, or like how African Americans are how the system has been rough against African American men, and absent father and all that. So then the idea goes, oh well, don't date a Black guy or don't marry a Black guy because he doesn't look after his kids. Well, where does that come from? Right? That's perpetuating things that or stereotypes we were taught. So we're embodying those lies, those atrocities, the barbarity. So that goes back to we're embodying colonialism, and then we go and we treat other people like that.
Absolutely.
Because we put ourselves on a pedestal.
So I have two questions for you.
Mhm.
One of them is one of my leading questions, but I'm going to start with this other question that
Okay.
sprung up from this discussion is, and I noticed that I think more Central and South Americans, they have a
Mhm.
better sense of like injustice,
Mhm.
systemic injustice, as related to history, where like I feel like a lot of African American people are sort of thinking about injustice as sort of like incidentally, like Martin Luther King happened, assassination,
Mhm.
Malcolm X assassination, which wasn't, I don't think that was the US. I think that was his own. I think he pissed off some people. Um,
Well, we don't know who did it, so we
yeah, we don't
can't.
know. He
Mhm.
knew he was gonna get assassinated, which is very
Yes, he did.
interesting. Um, but and then you have like Rodney King, and then you have
Mhm.
Trayvon Martin, and
Mhm.
I feel like African Americans' history is associated with like certain people and events, whereas like Central and
Mhm.
South Americans have this long history of like going back to before the Americas, right? Before it was called the Americas, of like, this is the history of like colonialism in our thing. And so do you feel like, and because of that, I feel like despite the fact that Central and South American peoples have a better sense of what's going on, and because of that, when they come to America, or they
Mhm.
just see people who are in America, they feel like, despite all the things they know about it, they feel like there's still a lot of like opportunity. This is still
Mhm.
like a place where you can sort of, live out the American dream.
Yes.
um and I'm generalizing, like all people might not feel this way, but do you
Mhm.
feel like that's, and I feel like Black people, sort of African American people, sort of sit in this pit of like the system and the world is against us, and specifically
Yeah.
do you feel like that's because because even Black Americans, even though they're subjugated, are specifically still like Americans? Do you feel like
I
that perspective is like that, or?
Well, I think we're thinking similarly against that, and we're gonna get canceled for this or kicked out of the EU. Um, but
Hey, if
there's
they kick
some
us out, it's racist, dude. It's a hate crime.
there is something to be said for that, right? Because we've gone years and years and years of like, for example, South America, Central America, which, I mean, I'm not an authority on that, right? I mean, I am from South America. I've read a lot of history, and I've done a lot of history class in Central America, going back to colonialism and
Mhm.
annihilation of the Mayan people. Especially in Guatemala, and the
Mhm.
US having a hand in that. But before the US did that, it was mostly Europeans
Mhm.
who, some of them would like mate with native women and then abandon their children.
Okay.
But they had like a serf system in this country where they would grow bananas and cocoa and all this stuff, and then they would reap all the money, and then these people would be living, horribly. And then if they complain, there's that crime. And then there was, when the Cold War happened, and the US were responsible for that, like, there's always fighting factions. So people are growing up poor with nothing, 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 and
Mhm.
they have to flee violence. I mean, I'm talking about, they don't know
You
which
get
side
shot,
to, yeah.
kidnapped at any moment. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like they don't know who is who. Like, if you support the guerrilla, then the army comes in and kills you. If you support the
Mhm.
army, the guerrilla comes in and kill you, and you don't know who is who. Neighbors turning against neighbor is just a horrible, horrible thing. But then they pack up and they travel and they come all the way here, but then they encounter another form of violence, which is in the form of racism with the color of their skin, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
if they, when they finally get through here, and then they see another group of people and they perceive them or judge them in a certain way, most likely, like, some of them don't know the history of African
Mhm.
Americans struggle in the US. And if
Mhm.
you see certain things, you're like, and hear certain things, right? Because
Mhm.
television, right? You're
Right.
gonna have preconceived notion about someone else.
Mhm.
and how you perceive them, and you're like, well, you know what, you can work but you don't want to,
Mm-hmm.
like you just want to do this or
Right.
that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I find that when I lived in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, it's all about cliques in those places. Like African American people live in neighborhoods, they have like generations and generations and generations, and they refuse to get out of it. And then when you ask them, they're like, oh, it's hard to get out because of, well, if you go to school and you get good grades, then it's like, oh, you think you're better than us. There's always somebody trying to pull you back. Well, why is that? Right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think so. There's all these sorts of issue of like not enough support
Mm-hmm.
and not enough like the education might fail people, family might fail people. I mean, I don't know if
Right.
I'm getting my point across, versus like someone coming here escaping violence, and then they're like, okay, this is the greatest thing in the world. I can work for whatever I want. I can put a roof over my head. Nobody's killing me in the street. And I might come here with nothing in my pocket, but because I work hard or because of a lucky break or whatever, I can make it now.
Mm-hmm.
And that caused resentment, especially when one side is paying taxes or have to pay extra taxes. And you have people saying, oh, this group is the reason that the taxes is so high. That breeds animosity among groups, right?
Right. I want to respond to a couple things you said there.
Mhm.
I also have to go to the bathroom again, but
Okay.
I can edit that out.
Okay.
But all right. So I think the first thing, all of what you said, I think that's a condition of Americanism. I think that's a condition of like growing up in America. And I'm not trying to say that like slavery wasn't bad. I'm not trying to say that like systemic racism against people of color, specifically Black people, isn't bad. But I think there is something to be said about the argument that's like, being Black in America, it's bad. Like there are things that are working against you, but like you're not in Syria getting bombed, day in and day out. Like, you don't have to like worry about like, is someone going to fucking shoot a missile in the middle of the night, and is it going to kill anyone? And I think those are two perspectives of people maybe coming here. It's like they have to worry about drug cartels, they have to worry about the guerrilla armies versus like government armies, like all of those things they have to worry about. And it's just two different perspectives. And I don't think any perspective is any more right than anyone else, because I think the people who, if the sides were flops, it would still be the same thing. These people would be like, well, you guys have it way easier than we do, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think it's a condition of Americanism. God, I had another point and it was so good, but I can't remember it. But I'm gonna let you marinate on this because I'm gonna go to the bathroom. But my question is, this was my third leading question: is colonialism wrong? And I'm gonna go to the bathroom. I'm gonna let you think about that.
Okay.
All right. Break time over. But all right, so my last question was, is colonialism wrong? And I have an opinion about this, but I want to hear sort of, I feel like you've done more research and you're more informed than I am. So I want to hear your perspective on.
Well, that's a problematic question, isn't it?
Uh-huh. It's a very problematic question, which is why I wanted to ask it.
It is very problematic because, there's no right and wrong answer here. I mean, on one hand, it's.
But I think a lot of people would disagree with you.
Yes, I know.
Okay.
Like I cannot come out and say, yes, colonialism is wrong, right? I can't do that.
Why?
Because I wouldn't exist if there wasn't colonialism. One, neither would you.
Does that justify?
That does not
your life justify millions of people?
It's not just my life; it's millions and millions of lives. But on the one hand, it's dehumanization of people, degradation of natural resources, violence on top of violence. But here's the thing: would we have arrived at the same place without colonialism? And that's the question we have to ask, right?
That's the question.
Right? So I I cannot answer that. I think colonialism is wrong, right? I think it's wrong, but would we have arrive at the same place without one dominant, or well, not one, but like four dominant groups come and taking away all the resources, conquering people, spreading their religion, spreading their diseases, um, raping and pillaging, forming new races, right? So, is there good aspects of colonialism? I can't name any.
I probably could.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm not going to, but I probably could. No, I'm just kidding. You know, I think what you were, I think a good aspect of colonialism is the fact that like cultures mix, and right, and sometimes it's forced mixing, but I think we underestimate the extent to which like colonialism, it's not like every single person from this empire or this race is like trying to dominate this other. Really, colonialism is like, I have no control over what the US does. Like if the US takes over another, if Mexico, let's just say if Mexico suddenly becomes part of the US, like I have no control over that. Like and so like as an average citizen, like I'd be like, this is probably wrong, but also, I mean, if this is part of the US, like I'm going to explore it. Like, and I feel like that's what a lot of colonialism was. It was like, whether you're the Romans or the Greeks or the British Empire, it's like, well, this is part of Britain. Like, and I think all of those people felt like, I'm not like, I'm in the British Empire, but I'm not like British. I felt like they were like, I'm, this or that or whatever.
Yeah, I get that, but I disagree with you that you have no control, because America is democracy, right? America is the greatest democracy in the world. You have a vote.
The very fact that you did. All right, I have a vote. I voted for Bernie Sanders and he fucking won those primaries and he still got fucking kicked out of the thing. So like, yes, you have a vote, but it's just like, it's not, I'm not going to say it's symbolic, but like it's damn near close.
Okay. On paper, like, but Bernie Sanders had a choice. He caved. Again, choices.
He could have fought and he still would have lost.
Choices.
And then they would have villainized him. They would have been Bernie. All right.
We're getting away from this.
But all I'm going to say is Bernie Sanders did what he thought he had to do to try and beat Donald Trump, and Hillary Clinton fucking dropped the bag. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Bernie Sanders didn't cave because he wanted to. Bernie Sanders caved because like he didn't want Donald Trump to win. Donald Trump still won because people underestimated how much people hated Hillary Clinton. And I mean, I hate Hillary Clinton too. So anyway.
I don't hate Hillary Clinton, but
really?
Yes, I don't hate her. I was of the opinion of better the devil you know than the one you don't know.
I feel like I know Donald Trump better than I know Hillary.
Okay,
Clinton.
I felt like 4 years of Hillary would have been better under 4 years of Trump. That was how I was thinking about it.
I'm not going to disagree with you on that.
Okay, well, so again, the devil I know versus devil I don't know. And I felt Trump like a devil I don't know. All the things he implemented, right? Like, I mean, he was the one who say, oh yeah, we're going to kill these people. We're going to use, Guantanamo Bay. We're going to torture. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And then when COVID broke out, going back to Guantanamo, he's like, don't we have an island where we can just throw a bunch of sick people? He wanted to use Guantanamo Bay to take all the COVID people and throw them there. So like, seriously.
It's not insane. So, all right. So I might get canceled for this. I think the first 2 years of Donald Trump's presidency, terrible human being, probably the best years of my life. Like the economy was like fucking
but that's the thing. This Arvis, or however you pronounce that word, is better than treating people like shit. Is so we're gonna be like, I make money, so it's okay to look away.
Yeah, I'm not defending Donald
Trump. That's colonialism.
I think Donald Trump said a lot of shit that he couldn't get done. Like the wall, he was like, let's build the wall. He couldn't get it done. Like he just, because it's like,
well, he says a bunch of shit. They're still building it, right?
I probably, but dude, that wall's never gonna get done. It's just not gonna fucking happen. But you know what I'm saying? Like he would say a lot of crazy shit, but he just couldn't do it because like everybody, even people who supported him were like, you just can't do that. Like they
No,
would
but
support him
he
in theory, but
invoked people to be hateful, right?
people were already hateful, yes, but
Yes, but he
he
emboldened
allowed them
them. That's the
to
point.
exist outside of their like. But I don't. I mean, I think he changed the landscape as like people feel more comfortable being hateful and like ignorant, but like they were always hateful and ignorant.
It is
It's like
scary if you look like me and you know what I look like to be among people and live in a certain part of the US who vote for Trump and embody his belief. It's really, really scary. I mean, and until you've been spit
mhm.
on, which I have because of the color of my skin,
Oh, I'd kill
right?
someone. I'd
Then
immediately kill
you
someone.
don't know what hate feels like, right?
Yeah. You know, I think the craziest thing about Donald Trump, I know so many people who voted for Bernie and then when Bernie lost, voted for Trump.
I know a lot of people. My
It's
family
insane.
members voted for Donald Trump. A lot of them did. I didn't hate them because of it, because I understand that I can't tell people who to vote for, and I shouldn't, because I wouldn't
Right?
want someone to do that for me.
Should. Yeah.
But I'm not going to dislike you just because you vote for Donald Trump. But we're
Mhm.
getting away from it,
Yeah, we're
from our
very far
point,
away.
right?
We need to, all right.
We
We need
need
to
to
pull up.
we need to go back.
Yeah, we need to pull
So,
out some quotes. You mentioned Guantanamo. I actually
mhm,
have a quote
mhm,
that I think could relate to a conversation we were having. So the conversation we were having about people coming to the U.S. from Central and South America versus African American Black people, which I'm
yeah.
not shitting on Black people at all because I understand. Um,
But you should take this moment to identify that you are a Black man.
do I have to? I mean,
Well,
yeah, I mean, sure. I feel like
I don't want you to get
that was
I don't
pretty
want you to get canceled.
self-explanatory. I
I don't want you to get
feel like
canceled.
that was pretty self-explanatory. Um, yes, I am a Black man. My mother and my father had sex and they created me. One was Black, one was white.
Thank
Uh,
God it wasn't illegal like Trevor Noah, but that's beside the point, right?
Jesus Christ. All right. Oh God, we're so canceled. So um there's hold on. I have this highlighted somewhere. I have it highlighted somewhere because I think this could be okay. All right. So this goes back. This goes back. So if we're looking at I'm looking at Guantanamo, the book or the collection,
Yeah.
whatever you want to call it. All right. On page 153. This is the final sort of interview, right? The president of the tribunal. If we understand you correctly, you're asking to be sent to Saudi Arabia. Detainee. No, I do not want to go to Saudi Arabia.
Mm.
President of the tribunal. Where do you want to go? Detainee.
I want to go
To
to
go
the
to the
United
United
States.
States. To go to the United States. This is what I wish for most in the world. And if the United States doesn't accept me, then I would like to go home to Uzbekistan. So that's, I feel like that quote perfectly encaptures the immigrants just experience of like the fact that this person is being unjustly accused of crimes they didn't do, the fact that this person is being detained in one of the worst prisons in the circuit of United States prisons, and at the end of the day still wants to go to the United States, right?
Mhm.
And I think it's significant that he said, if I can't go to the US, I'd rather go home. And I feel like with the immigrant experience, that's the same thing. I feel like people don't understand. They say like, oh, people come here and they still, they still fly their country's flag and they still blah blah blah. And I'm just like, yeah, if these people could go back to their countries, if their countries had the same opportunities, if their countries weren't like, super violent or whatever the situation is, these people would love to go back to Mexico, to Chile, to Uruguay, to Panama, wherever. They would rather be there. The only reason that they're here is because the US has made the socio-economic political system has made it so shitty that they would rather leave their home country where their families grew up. Probably a lot of their family still lives there. Like a lot of these people have not seen their family in decades because they're trying to make a better life for themselves and for their children and for their grandchildren.
Yeah.
I feel like that's something people don't understand. I feel like that's perfectly encapsulated here.
It is, because that brings me to mind of a story of nowhere else in the world would a Jew, a Christian, and a Muslim be neighbors but the United States and live peacefully, right? But it brings us back to survivance. So the concept of survivance, of Wisner survivance, which comes from Derrida, La Survivance, which denotes a spectral existence that's neither life or death. So survivance, according to Wisner, means an active sense of presence and continuance of native stories, not the reaction or the survivable name, but the renunciation of dominance, strategy, and victimry. So survivance and resistance, basically, that's what it is, combining survival, and resistance. And it nourishes the indigenous way of life. But this theory not only applies to Native American, it applies to an immigrant experience.
Right.
It applies to those South Americans fleeing here in droves, right? They call them the horde. It applies to a thing of like the Japanese American internment. It applies to all that. It's because you have colonialism that happens, right? All these atrocities like Sand Creek, which we read about that, and we should probably get into that a little bit.
We will.
It embodies all those things, and it's just people taking what happened to them, and they decided that, okay, we're not just gonna take it sitting down, we're gonna take that atrocity and we're gonna turn it around, and we're gonna show you how strong we are. We're gonna show you that we can survive using the tools you use on us to subjugate us. So if you use comedy, we're gonna go and do comedy and show you that we can still laugh. Right?
Exactly.
So it's kind of stuff like that. So I mean, this guy, I really love Frank Smith Guantanamo, because it's not only visceral and painful, it's hopeful. And I know it went through a lot, and it's like an arc narrative and everything. But in the end, he still had hope to provide for his pregnant wife, his mother. And he's like, send me to the United States. It's the only place I know I can provide for them.
Right. And I feel like it's such a, I don't want to use the word desperate, but like it's such a human sort of like, despite the fact that all of these things that people have been through, it's still sort of like, this is, the United States is the pinnacle of like, this is where I need to be to like survive and to feel like I have a life. And I mean, all these, I mean, it's insane. Like we read that article where Guantanamo still have, there are people that are still there.
Yes.
Like in solitary confinement, like that drives people. And it's been known, solitary confinement has been known to drive people insane.
Yeah. There's the British citizen guy who still has not, been released because England doesn't want him, so he doesn't have anywhere to go, and he's a citizen.
And they've been in there for decades.
Yeah.
Like when this book and Poems from Guantanamo came out, they'd been in there for years, which is a long ass time. But I mean, Poems from Guantanamo came out in 2007. I don't remember when this came out. This came out in like what, 2004?
Check the cover.
It's on the cover. It's not on the cover.
It should say
2014. Yeah. So fuck, dude. Like, it's fucking, the fact that these people have not killed themselves, and I say that with the utmost respect, is like, I couldn't do it. I literally couldn't do it.
It shows you the human spirit, right? It goes back to survivance, assimilation, and the right to live.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, you say you can't do it, but if you're living for other people, maybe you would.
But here's the thing. I mean, you get to a point where it's like, I haven't seen or heard or spoken to these people. We're not talking years of this. We're talking decades.
I
Like,
know, but
I don't know where my wife and child are.
hope is a wonderful, fickle thing, right?
I mean,
This is the human spirit. The human spirit is hope. And if we have hope, we can survive anything. And it's just sometimes you need a speck, a tiny little speck. It takes you back to Horton Hears a Who. Do you know that story?
by
Dr. Seuss.
Dr. Seuss.
I'm taking you
Okay.
all the way back to
All right.
kindergarten, right?
Refresh my memory, but yes, I've
So
read it.
Horton Hears a Who is these Horton found these the Who's live in a clover and he's carrying out in his trunk, right? It's a clover and it's in his trunk, and if he set them down, they can blow away and they're dead. But Horton has to find a way to get them to, to protect them, and that the Who has to communicate with Horton, right?
Right.
So everyone is panicking, but yet one person, right, had hope and guide Horton through this, and he's going through his own adversity. The Who's are going through their own adversity, but in the end, hope wins. And that's what we're taught, right? From kindergarten, we're conditioned that way.
I wasn't ready for Horton Hears a Who. Critical analysis.
Nice. You see, books, it's very important.
I wasn't ready for this. All right. So, I just want you to know, we've been talking for like 40 minutes.
Okay, let's
hit. All right. So we should hit some quotes. All right. So if we're looking at Poems of Guantanamo.
Yeah.
I'm looking at page, the PDF file, it's page 38 on the actual, like if you had the actual printout, it's page 25. But I think this goes back to sort of what we were just talking about. So 2 years, it's called To My Father. And
yes, that's my favorite poem in here.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yes.
So 2 years have passed in faraway prisons. 2 years, my eyes untouched by coal. 2 years, my heart sending out messages to the homes where my family dwells, where lavender cotton sprouts for grazing herds that leave well fed. Oh, how do you say that? Falage?
Yeah, Falaji.
Falaji?
Yeah.
Explain to those who visit our home how I used to live, right? It's pointing to, and I mean, this is my American poetics sensibility, but it's pointing to the sort of like this American pastoral sort of thing. But it is also this, like, it's almost like an elegy. Like, it's almost like this person who's writing this, whose name is, let's give a name to this. Oh boy. Abdullah Thani Faris
Al-Azami. Yeah.
Relation? I don't know. Al-Nazi, right?
Yeah.
He's sort of like talking as if he's already, it's an elegy. Like he feels like, I feel like he feels like this is where he is. And I'm sure if we were in that situation, we'd feel the same way too. It's like, this is where I'll live. This is where I'll die, you know?
Yeah, but did you go up where you find his name and see that he's a double amputee, having lost both of his leg in the U.S. bombing? So those prose, those lyrical prose that you call an elegy, that's where he lives. That's where his hope is. He's giving you a glimpse of what goes on in his head.
Yeah, I think so. I think he lives in that sort of imaginary state, not imaginary, but that like recollective state of, thinking of home and like wanting to return. It's just so sad. It's just, there's no other word for it except
it's visceral. I mean, I don't know. Sad. I always say visceral because it's like it makes you nauseated and it makes you cry and it makes you feel at the same, and it's uncomfortable.
Yeah. It is. It is uncomfortable. Um,
You
do
know,
you
it's
have?
like this line that says, "Oh Father, this is a prison of injustice. Its
Mhm.
inequity makes the mountains weep. I've committed no crime and I'm guilty of no offense. Curved clawed I have, but I have been sold like fattened sheep."
Mhm.
Like, how do you not read this and see the humanity of it?
Yeah, I mean, I just it it's heartbreaking. Like when I first read it, I was just like, oh man, like I think isn't this the first poem? This is the first poem.
Is it the first
Oh
poem in
no,
the
no,
book?
it's
No, it's
not. It's
not.
not. But it's pretty close to the front,
Yeah, but
and it's
it goes back to, well, I'm gonna take us back to Sand Creek, so we should go to Sand Creek.
which one? Sand Creek.
So let's look at Mochi, Prisoner of War.
Okay.
So where's my Sand
Wait,
Creek?
Prisoner of War?
Yeah, it's
Oh, this is one of your specific ones. I
yeah,
think.
this is
Okay, so give it to me.
so Mochi, Prisoner of War, right? Let me get my quote out. Maybe
Yeah,
we
I
should edit
focused on the
this.
Billy Stratton.
Yeah, this is Billy Stratton. But it's written by Kimberly, what's her name? Blazer. And it's
Okay.
called Mochi of Prisoner of War. And the poem starts by saying, try to imagine the slow motion minutes that change her life. Dawn, November 29, 1864. You're a Mochi, buffalo calf. Your band is camped at Big Sandy Creek. Your leader, Black Kettle, flies American stars and stripe above his lodge. Flies the white flag of truce. You are here, and Black Kettle has sent the warriors to hunt buffalo. So this this Native American author sets up this poem like this is what's happening. Like it's calm, it's peaceful. Children are in the field playing. The women are preparing, are gathering ingredients to prepare a meal. The warriors went off to find buffalo. They're flying the American flag. They're flying truce, and this poem really affected me because when we had to write something, I started by saying, can you imagine being taken away from every single thing you know in a matter of minutes? Can you imagine the pain and anger of not being able to say goodbye to your surrounding, your gods, your land, your mother, father, sister, or brother? Can you imagine saying goodbye to your dreams, watching them die, and your life has just become a barren field covered in salt where nothing grows? Can you imagine walking on the bones of your ancestors, watching them die like lamb to slaughter? And hearing stories of your people, their carnage, and wonder if humanity is dead, and questioning yourself if you're really nothing. And I feel like Native Americans feel like that all the time because everywhere they go, right, they're walking literally on their dead. And it's funny because I took Billy, not funny, haha, but I took Billy Stratton's class. So I am not traditionally educated here. Um, and the first thing Billy Stratton asks you, he gives you a quiz. He teaches Native American literature. He gives you a quiz, and these are the questions. Can you name 5 Native American person? Can you tell me how many Native American tribes there are just in the US? Right? Can you tell me anything you know about Native American? He asks you three basic questions. And the answer you get is Pocahontas, Sacagawea, and Geronimo. And nobody, and I mean nobody, can tell you the amount of Native American tribes there are in this country.
I think what let me guess. Do you know the answer?
No, go ahead.
Do you know the answer though? If
I
guess?
Give or take, I can guess.
I think they're at least 80.
You're wrong.
I'm wrong.
There's over 500 and something tribes in the United States. Yes.
Holy fuck. All right, well.
Yeah, 80 is very, very low because you have there's Alaska, No one else claimed Alaska. But there's lots and lots of tribe. Not all of them are federally recognized, but there's like 500 and something tribes in the United States.
I think that's
And,
what I'm thinking. Federally
uh,
recognized.
federally recognized, I couldn't give you that
Shoshone?
number, but it's probably like 300-400.
Jesus. All right. Well, fuck me.
I mean, I don't know this for a fact, so maybe someone will call us out on this because we don't have the numbers.
I mean, no, we can look at it. We have technology. Let's see. How many?
Maybe it's not 500. Maybe it's less.
American tribes are in the U.S. Okay. 574. Oh, okay. So combined federal and state recognized tribes.
Yes.
So there might even be more than that.
Yes.
But between those two, there are 574 recognized.
Yeah.
Tribes.
I wanted to say 575, but so I said 5 and something because I wasn't sure.
I mean, that's very close.
Yeah. So that's what we're dealing with. Yet when we're going back to the early question of American history, right? Are you guys taught that in school? Are you taught about these tribes? Are you taught that there's something that happened called a Trail of Tears?
We're not taught shit, dude.
Right?
Like, I didn't even know Native Americans, like, until I got to college, I didn't even know Native Americans existed outside of the U.S.
What?
Yes.
That's sad.
I mean, I also came from Nevada, which is 49th in education, but.
Yes, but Nevada does have Native American tribes.
Yeah.
Right?
Mojave.
Yeah.
It's the biggest one, probably,
So if I said to you, like, do you know why Native American hate Abe Lincoln? Would you know anything about that? Because this is historical fact.
No, but I do know why they like Richard Nixon.
Yeah, I think well, that's a good start, right?
I do know that side of it, so I don't know why they hate Abe Lincoln.
Well, Abe Lincoln, he had it's like 40, 47, 40, 42 Native Americans killed because they rebelled. They were starving, and the people said, "Let them eat grass." So
that's
I don't. The story is atrocious, and there's a reference to it in the Sand Creek journal. Let me pull it up. I will show you.
The study? Are you talking about the study?
This not the study of what happened to these people, and there, I think it was Michigan, Minnesota.
I think it's Minnesota. Actually, I'm starting to remember this. He had them hanged, right?
Yes, he had them hanged.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's called a 47. I think it's a 47. Anyway, 47 men rebelled and they were hanged, and he had no sympathy for them.
No, none of them did.
Which is sad, right? Because Abraham Lincoln is supposed to be this great liberator, right? And
all men have flaws.
Full disclosure, he is like my favorite president. So
Abe?
Yes. I mean, I do like Teddy Roosevelt, but that doesn't go much for taste with me.
Bill Clinton.
I love Teddy because of what he did for this park and what he wanted to do with corporations and things like that. He was a really, really responsible man. I mean, he had some good ideas. I also like Wilson, but that I won't go into that because I say that to people and they're looking at me like I'm crazy because he was like a known racist. So
I mean, most of them were racist. There are very few of them who weren't racist. I could probably count them on my hands, but.
Well, I don't know. Say what you want about Bush, but he didn't seem like a racist man. I don't know.
No, he's just dumb as fuck.
He went to Harvard, so.
Dude, did Donald Trump go to Princeton or something? You know
No.
those motherfuckers.
Donald Trump didn't go to Princeton.
He went to one of the dude. You know those motherfuckers.
He went to
actually,
Pennsylvania, University of Pennsylvania.
Whatever, but you know those motherfuckers didn't actually like. They're too fucking dumb. They are too fucking dumb. You know they just paid their way through that.
Okay, so if we look at the massacre of Sand Creek, right, and then we compare the Billy Stratton's report with University of Denver on John Evans, and we look at the report from the Northwestern University, what do you think of that? Because to me, when I read both report, Northwestern seemed to me like they decided that they were gonna find in favor of Evans, and that's that, and they didn't care about backlash or consequence or being politically correct, right? Mm-hmm. Where University of Denver was like, we're gonna err on the side of justice. Mm-hmm. I mean, do you think there was bias in any of the reporting? That's what I should ask you.
Well, I think there's bias in every reporting. I think all right, so there's a section in the DU report, or Billy Stratton's report, that I think is so on page 24 of the PDF, 12 of the actual document, it says, certainly there are aspects of the story for which John Evans cannot in fairness be accused. There is no evidence that he co-conspired with Shivington to carry out the attack. He cannot be attributed responsibility for the specific atrocities that occurred at the hands of Shivington's troops. He was not the only powerful official that shared responsibility for the decisions and actions preceding the massacre, and he did not ascribe to what at the time was called an exterminationist policy in regards to the so-called Indian problem, to which Shivington, for all intents and purposes, did ascribe. That is, a willingness to systemically hunt down and murder native peoples, little and big, as Shivington said, wherever they were encountered. And then a little bit down, it says, according to our analysis, Evans bears serious culpability for the Sand Creek massacre having occurred. And basically the idea is like, yeah, Evans didn't say like, go in here and kill these people and fucking be fucking savages. But I think where the two documents differ and why they differ is because of that. But I think Billy Stratton was like, he didn't say that, but like he didn't stop it either. Like he didn't know that Shivington was gonna go in there and like fucking scalp people and like cut babies out of people's wombs and like mutilate people's bodies. But he was basically like, I don't want to deal with this problem anymore. It's in your hands. Do whatever you want, and I'll probably back you up.
Right? I get that, but why give them medals after the fact? Who, why elevate them? Yeah, John Evans, because he was governor of Colorado, right?
Actually, so according to this document, he wasn't. So
wasn't he in charge because he was friends with Lincoln?
Hold on. Where I highlighted this. Hold on.
Because I'm looking at this document and it says concerning both university, it says if both university communities accomplish their task, these reports will raise more questions for consideration than either can possibly hope to answer. Is that a cop-out or no?
Say that one more time.
So he said if both university committees accomplish their task, right? Which is the research for all of this, these reports will raise more questions for consideration than either can possibly hope to answer.
I don't think it's a cop-out. I think it's just like,
well, the reason I say that it's because of Silas So.
Yeah, I think so. What I was trying to find, I can't. So they, Soul, right? It says on page 21 of the PDF, which is 9 of the actual document. It says both Sol and Kramer testified at these hearings, repeating the descriptions of Sand Creek they detailed in their letters. Sol appeared before the military commission as its first witness, blah, blah, blah. 1865, 2 months after his testimony while acting as Denver Provost Marshal Captain Sol was gunned down by 2 blue-clad soldiers. But it basically says it. I remember reading in this article, it says it did ruin Evans' run for governorship. He might have been governor and then lost it, or I can't remember if he was governor and lost it, or if he was running for governor and lost it. I mean, realistically, it was just more of like, it was more of like a symbolic sort of like, hey, that was fucked up. It wasn't an actual, you know, I mean, the 2 guys who killed Sol didn't even go to, they faced no consequences, and Evans never faced any. He never went to jail or stood trial.
He didn't do. There wasn't much done to him politically or any other, but the idea that Evans was no more to be blamed than many other leaders who saw no place for Native people to be integrated in American culture, like that in itself. And I'm probably in a different document than you. Which one am I on?
I'm looking at the DUJEC report, November 1st.
I'm in Reports of John Evans Study Community, University
of Denver. So we're looking at 2 different things.
Yes. Okay. So that in itself is saying, well, you know, Evans is a man of his time, right? That's implicating that to me, right?
Yeah.
But if Evans is a man of his time, then is Silas Sol out of time?
Like, is he more? Are you saying he's more progressive?
Because Silas Sol stood up against all these people, didn't testify against them, right? Remember, Silas Sol, we took that antebellum class together. I don't know if you were paying attention to Danielle Castle's presentation.
Was I paying
attention? So Daniel was talking about John Brown. He did his presentation on John Brown, and I wrote my essay on similar to that. And John Brown, when he went to Virginia to commit his acts, right? Harper's Ferry, right? To commit his acts. He was before that, Silas Sol broke John Brown out of prison in Virginia, in Kansas. So Silas Sol was an abolitionist. Mm-hmm. And I think he was Calvinist. No, what's the other one called?
Methodist. Baptist,
no,
Satanist.
No, they're in Quaker. He was a Quaker.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So they have like really they live what they preach, right? So he doesn't believe in hurting people. He was a man, he was a literally human being who felt for other people, right?
Native Americans people.
Well, yeah.
I know, I'm just fucking with
you. You know, so he was an abolitionist in every sense of the word, right? It didn't matter someone's skin color. He saw Native Americans as people, African American as people, right? Everybody was people to him. Where these other crusty, pale dudes, I mean, that was mean, I'm sorry. You're editing that out.
No, I'm not.
Did not see other people of different skin tone as people, mm-hmm. Right? So who was the man of his time? Silas Sol or John Evans or Shivington? Which one of?
I think, I mean, according to the UNLV document, I think according to the UNLV document, they say, that, gosh, where is it? Okay. God, I can't find it. I have all this highlighted and I can't find it. But anyway, they say at one point that John Evans was not like hyper anti-Native American. They said that he disagreed with the treaty that the state of Colorado or the US government made with the Native Americans. He wasn't, he didn't think it was like fair, or like he didn't think it was like in the best interest of Coloradans. And I'm not like backing up the dude, but even they in the same document where they're like it's still his fault, they're like he wasn't necessarily like, fuck these Native Americans. He was just like, I don't think this treaty is like right. I don't think it's accurate. I don't think it's just. So I think even Evans, he was not like, let's exterminate these people. He was more just like, I don't want these people in my state, which is still fucked up.
But here's
But
the thing: Evans was a superintendent of Indian Affairs.
yeah, he was. And that's why they blame him, because they say, okay, I have a quote for this because I just read it. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Can I make it? Given a clear mandate from Indian Commissioner Dole and others at different points to do everything he could to broker peace with the tribes who had not signed on to or did not support the Treaty of Fort Wise, and given his political authority and influence as territorial governor, John Evans was not obligated to surrender authority to the military. Rather than pursuing the perhaps less popular path of peace, Evans allowed colonial God, what's that word?
I don't know what you're reading.
Colonel
Okay.
Colonel Shivington to declare martial law. In doing so, the governor superintendent handed the fate of Colorado's native inhabitants to a military hungry for war, right? So yeah, that's why they blame him. It's like he didn't specifically say go in here and kill these people, but he did like a hands off, like do whatever you want, I don't care.
Yes, but that means he's culpable, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like that's what the document says. That's why they're saying he is. And I think the other document from the other university says he isn't, because they're saying like, well, he didn't specifically say go do this. But it's like he didn't specifically say not to do it. Like he had a responsibility and he didn't do it. He didn't fulfill it.
But the barbarity of what Shivington did is what gets to me, and the after effects of it, right?
Yeah.
The after effects is what to me makes Evans culpable and inhumane.
I'm saying he is too.
Yeah. So like okay, fine, hands off, right? And Shivington commit all these atrocities, right? In Evans' name. Okay. But John Evans is still culpable because of what happened after they came back, and the body of how they kill women and children and raping them, and doing all these atrocious things, taking all their property. That
froze. Oh, there you go.
Oh, sorry. These uncalled for. Yeah, my internet just says it's unstable. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. But
yeah, I agree. Totally agree.
I don't know. It says that history is written by the conqueror, so
I mean, that's true. Dead people can't write history.
Yeah, but I mean, there is a narrative. It is a way where things are turning around for Native Americans, right?
I don't know. Ask them that. I don't
well, in a sense that
they'd agree with you.
I mean, narrative are changing, like, right? Because now we have dominant narrative, and then we had like the U.S. history narrative where everything was U.S. history. Columbus discovered the New World, including North America, and this didn't happen, that didn't happen. But now people are pushing back on that, and there's a counter narrative, and lots of times the counter narratives are winning out.
Yeah, I think that's the socio-political situation that we're in. It's identity politics. It's an emphasis on culture, all of those things. And I mean, that's a natural. I think you and I have strong opinions about this movement, but I think that's the natural sort of progression towards. I think that's what created Donald Trump as president. I think, everything is like a pendulum. We swung very far left, and then Donald Trump was the swing very far right. And I think it's.
But that's the scary thing about pendulum, because the people in the middle are the one that's suffering.
Well, everybody's suffering.
Right? I mean,
everybody's suffering, except for rich people.
these are human stories, so we have to recognize that they're all flawed, and we're all flawed, so the stories are flawed too.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
that, yeah, it brings back, it goes back to archives. And I think I found something from Wendy Duffy. Let me find it. Hopefully I can find it. Did I copy it?
Well, I'm gonna I'm gonna let you go, but I'm gonna tie this into De Las
Yeah,
Casas too.
yeah.
Let me pull
Did
that up.
we get the amount? Do we need to?
Oh
So
shoot, no.
Wendy Duffy article on social justice impact of archives and preliminary investigation sum up the importance of documentation. So what I think for both Billy Stratton and DU and the Northwestern people, I think it's good to have the documentation where you and I can sit down and take a side and argue about it.
Yeah.
It's really important. So they said we could even argue that the preservation of the record, even if it's never accessed, can promote a culture of accountability and transparency, both as safeguard and deterrent in which government acts responsible and citizens understand their rights in relation to government. This value encourages us to consider the impact of the archives beyond broadening people's perception and behavior, to consider the ways in which archival documents are used to further social justice in the political arena. In fact, to hold that it is the potential of archives as a contributor to social justice that is one of its salient characteristics vis-a-vis the area of research. So kudos to Billy Stratton and the Northwestern people, because we have both narrative, we have counter and we have dominant, and it's up to me and you to access them and come up with what we think is right. So we think one thing today, but this next generation might find fault in it, right?
Yeah, I think if you had asked people 30 years ago what they thought about that, I mean, they'd still, I think no matter what, I think every human being who's an actual human being would be like, that's like when you're just reading the like people were scalped, women were shot, just like brutal murder, you're just like, that's fucked, but I think it sort of goes back to I think what's salient with us is like this argument of like, should our mascot be the pioneers, right? At DU, like, is that people want to get rid of it, people don't. I have my own opinions about it. I think you do too, but
I
you know,
do.
I
Um,
think I think the pendulum sway. I think 30 years ago, it might not have been that big of an issue. I think people would have been like, "Oh, that's a little weird," but I think now, if you ask most people, they're like, "That's fucked up." Maybe 20 years from now, I see the pendulum swinging back.
yeah, it
You
is gonna
know,
come back. Of course it is. Everything comes back, right?
yeah, like
You
even
know?
6 years ago, like everybody was like hardcore, like you know, what you call it, cancel culture,
Mm-hmm.
feminism, trans rights, and all these things. And now I see the pendulum sort of swinging back where it's like, I think there's a lot of like, should we believe all women? You know, should we just accept at face value that like someone says something and that's just truth? Is everything injustice, or sometimes is it something else, right? you know and I'm not saying for the other in this moment. I'm just posing these questions because I think this is what I see you know
Well, we should
Good.
get into doc on doc.
Yeah, we can get into doc on doc. I do also wait, can we do De Las Casas first, because I feel
Oh
like
yes,
that's
definitely.
immediate, because I
Mm-hmm.
feel like that's immediate prescient. All right, so
Yeah.
um right, so speaking about sort of like what we're speaking about with Sand Creek, I feel like De Las Casas sort of talks about the same thing in what they referred to as Hispaniola, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I couldn't really figure out what the page number was on this PDF. It said A2, right?
Okay.
The Europeans had no sooner entered on this vast continent and the islands about it, but the natives showed them all imaginable kindness and respect, and were ready to worship them like gods. But thereafter soon took care to convince them of their error by treating them with all manner of cruelties, right? I feel like this person who's writing the Bartholomew, right, is sort of the same person as Soul, right? He's seeing these injustices happen to these native peoples, right? There's this crazy quote. Oh, this one. It's on page 3 of the actual document after the introduction, not the PDF. It says, the Spaniards who have given them so much trouble and fallen upon them so fiercely resemble savage tigers, wolves, and lions. When enraged with pressing hunger, they applied themselves for years together, 40 years together, wholly to the massacring. I'm sorry, this is in like a weird language. To wholly massacring the poor wretches that inhabited the islands, putting them all gosh, what is this word? All through kinds of unheard torments and punishments, in so much that this island, which contained about 3 million of people, is now reduced to less than 300, right? I feel like that's sort of the same, this like idea of extermination. And if you look at the beginning of the De Las Casas thing, right, there are drawings of like people getting cut open, people getting burned alive. Like it's the same sort of on a more massive scale. Well, I shouldn't say that. Sand Creek was not a small portion, but a section of a much, just like this huge, massive sort of genocide. And I feel like what's being pointed to here,
but that it is the same, because De La Casas is referring to the Tiano or the Arawak, which are my people. They're like 2% of them left in the world. And
2%?
Yes, it's like really, really bad. And they still like live in the, you can find them like the interior of Brazil and Guyana, and they try not to interact, but because gold and whatnot is found there, people bother them. So he's kind of right about talking about that, because Columbus did, he was a catalyst in that. Right. Because once they see, because people, what they didn't have use for gold, it was decoration, and even then it was like, it's just a piece of metal, like, right, and that just changed someone's life. Can you imagine that? Like, you have like this earring, and I come in and be like, ooh, that's shiny, and just rip it off your ear, right? That's not cool, right? And then I put a knife to your throat and said, hey, I want more of that. Show me where that is.
Well, I feel like what's happening here, it's not even like, it goes beyond like, it goes into like Sand Creek, where it's like, this is more than just like, this is like hate, this is like pure evil. It's like pure, I'm just like, there's a difference between, I'm just going to kill all these Native Americans, and I'm going to mutilate and cut these people open and make shit out of their skin. Like that's dark. And I just wrote some points down because I knew we wouldn't be able to talk about all this. So on page 4, 12 million people put to death in 40 years in this area of the world. They're driven by gold and silver, right? As you just said, they want gold and silver. Princes and governors raped, put to death, page 7. Burning, boiling, drowning people alive, page 8. We have a precursor to slavery, right? They had these hunting dogs because people started fleeing into the woods. Page 9. They had this thing where it's like, we will kill 100 natives for every 1 Spaniard killed, also on page 9. And then, perhaps not the craziest part, but like the what the fuck moment is Spaniards who were like, wait a minute, this is kind of wrong. Other Spaniards would kill them. They would kill them, or they would cripple them. Page 14.
Right? So what they did was they had this practice. So if people raise arm or complain, they would chop your hands off.
Yep.
Right? And hang it around your neck.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And then they would say, go,
remember that.
Go show other people
what
we can do to you.
It was insane. And I think this goes all the way back to our initial conversation of like, if you give people power,
Mhm.
which is my argument of like, goes back to is colonization wrong? And is there a difference between colonization and conquering? Is there a difference? I'd like to hear what you think.
There is no difference between colonization and conquering. I think I was in a classroom taking a theory of colonization, and my professor was saying how not all colonization is bad. And I was like, and you know how I get with that. So I raised my hand and I said, how can you say that? And she's like, well, right now I'm colonizing you because I'm imparting my knowledge onto you. And that's a form of colonization.
Why would you ever say that?
She had a point because she's teaching me things, right? That's form of colonization. There's all different definition, right?
Teaching is colonization? Just
In
teaching
a,
someone something?
in a sense, she's teaching me all these new stuff, right? That
I
I
don't
might
think
not
that's
know.
colonization.
Well,
I think
maybe I'm defining it wrong, and maybe that's not how she meant it. But she's saying that there's good form of colonization. Now I disagree with that. I don't, like I said, I couldn't name any, right? In the beginning of this, when you asked me this question, I can name the bad stuff. I can't name the good stuff. And
I
I'm a product of colonization, and I can't give you any good stuff.
yeah, but I don't think simply teaching someone something is colonization. I think it's colonization when you're like, I'm going to erase the sort of trains of logic or the histories that you understand as that you use to understand the world, and I'm going to replace it with my own different cultures. I think that's colonization, but I don't think simply being like, hey, do you want to, I'm going to teach you about this author. Like, I don't think that's colonization,
But
right?
well, maybe I misunderstand what she was trying to say, but that's how I took it. Like, you being up here teaching me is a form of colonization.
And
Because
I mean,
if you're teaching me a different language, isn't that colonization?
no, because I think of it, if we're talking about education and teaching someone, I think it's only colonization when the intention is, whether it's conscious or subconscious, is to use that teaching to erase what you already know.
Okay.
Like all right, so like when they took Native Americans and they put them in colleges, and they what civilize the savage, right? Take the savage
boarding
out of,
school, the native boarding school. That's
yeah,
what it was called.
that's colonization. But I think if I just like, oh, this is gonna sound weird. If I just like went on to a reservation and people were interested in learning and they wanted to like learn things from me, and I was like, yeah, I'll teach you things. My intention is not to erase your history. My intention is just like, you want to learn something, yes. But I think colonization is when you're like, I want you to forget everything that you know up to this point, and I'm going to replace it with this.
Okay, I can see your point. So maybe I did misunderstand her.
And I think the point she might have been making is like, it feels like colonization because you don't, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like your public education background is not a US
No.
education.
And I'm mostly self-educated too. So we should point that out.
Yeah. So I think a lot of education that you're getting here in a lot of ways might be contradictory.
Yes, it is
incomplete compared to the education you were getting elsewhere, right? And I think this is something like Frankie talks about too. She's like, you guys don't learn about these things, and it's just like, yeah, we don't, because we don't value them.
Well, that's true, right? And that will open a whole can of worms. So I'm not even going to touch that. But I wanted to ask you if you know where Hispaniola is.
Do I know where Hispaniola is?
Yeah, Hispaniola.
Hispaniola. Dude, I have no idea.
So Hispaniola, have you ever heard of the island of Haiti?
I know Haiti.
And Dominican Republic.
Okay.
So that whole island was called Hispaniola. But then it was separated. One was French and then one was Spanish. So That's where Columbus landed first, the island of Hispaniola.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
So,
See, I thought it was just, I thought that's just what they referred to the area as.
mhm.
I didn't know.
And that's what he named it Hispaniola. And then when the French took over part of the island, they call it, it was called Saint Domingue.
Okay.
And then, which Saint Dominic,
Yeah.
and then Dominican Republic. It remained the same in Spanish. Okay. But then when, after the rebellion by Toussaint Louverture, it became Haiti or Haiti.
We're learning things.
So I first encountered Gomez Pena in a performance piece called The Couple in the Cage. And it's on two undiscovered Amerindians visit the West. Now, this piece, I was uncomfortable, like so uncomfortable in my skin. Like I wanted to throw up. I was
the whole thing or a specific part?
The whole thing.
The whole thing.
I wanted to throw up. I was angry, right?
Okay.
So I was vulnerable. I was disappointed in how people were behaving. People were throwing apples at him because people didn't know that it was a performance piece, right? So basically,
oh, you're talking about the live performance video.
This live performance, I'm talking about something else. So he comes in and then they said these people were found in the jungle and he's dressed like a Native American,
sure.
An Amazonian, and people are taking pictures, and it made me confront how cruel humanity is. So it leave a bitter taste in my mouth. No, I don't have anything against Gomez Pena, but he always makes me feel this way. So looking at Doc on Doc, I kind of had to interrogate myself a little bit. And I wanted to know his message of pain, but because he's dealing with colonialism, he's dealing with racism, he's dealing with violence, right? Sure. And what I discovered about me is that I didn't want to be confronted with the past, and that Gomez Pena has a knack of doing that because I'm carving out a future for myself. And sure. Right now, to me, I'm being selfish, if that makes sense. So I don't want to be part of his social justice because to me, I'm not doing enough for my own community, and I don't want to be confronted with that. But the thing about Gomez Pena is he's great in a lot of ways in his poetry, but his performance piece, like the ones that we looked at on Doc and Doc, I did not get it. Like, how is drinking salsa picante a performance?
So I have my first question is, are we all responsible for sort of doing more for our race? Is that our responsibility?
No, but I kind of have this complex that we won't go into.
Yeah, I'm just asking.
Yeah, no, we're not.
Should we be responsible?
Maybe we'll make a better world if we were all responsible human beings, but in the end of the day, we're all selfish creatures, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's selfish.
If it doesn't affect us, we don't do anything.
Well, I think it's fair to say that, I just want to live as a human being. And this is something I bring up in class a lot, especially with publishing, right? Mm-hmm. I feel like the current publishing climate is acclimated towards and is attracted towards these people are talking about identity, whether that's race, whether that's gender, mm-hmm. whether that's ethnicity, whether that's sex, whether that's all of these kinds of things. And I feel like that's created a lot of this person is not actually saying anything. This person is just, they know if they talk about being gay, for instance, right?
They'll get
published. This person knows that if they just talk about being an immigrant, they'll get published. And as an artist, I feel like that's pretty discouraging for me because my thing is I can't write poems about race. If I'm going to talk about race, I want to talk about it very lucidly. I want to talk about it very upfront. It's not an artistic thing to me. It's it's a critical sort of logical thing. And I'm not saying anything about people, because I think there are a lot of people who talk about their identity in really profound creative ways, but I feel like people like me and people like me and you are pressured to sort of talk about,
Yes.
you know, our race is like, oh, don't you want to, you know, don't you want to talk about what does this have to do with the black? If someone asked me what my poetry has to do with the black experience, I'd be like, well, I'm black, so everything I do has to do with the black experience, but I'm not
See,
talking about the black experience.
I it's funny that I meet someone who thinks along the lines of I do, the way I do, because I'm usually it's an Indian undergrad. Like I'm usually only brown person in there,
Yeah,
you know.
especially at
But
DU.
yeah, so and then I have the most controversial things, and people look at me and like, you can't say that, and I was like, well, why can I say that, right? Or like, I need the black opinion, and then they're like, one professor said to me, I can't believe you said that, and I was like, why? Because I'm brown, I can't say that, I can't be on the side you're on. Like, I don't look at myself as a, not, I shouldn't say as a color, but I look at myself as a human being. Like, if you cut me open, you're gonna see the same thing in my inside as you. I'm insecure just like you, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I worry about the same thing as you, maybe not as much, but we're all human beings at the end of the day, and that's how I want to be treated, like a human being. And I get it. Like, I have a poem called The Brown Girl, and I've been told that I need to publish that because it's such a good poem. Now, it's one of my favorite poems, but it's my favorite poem because I I like how it flows. I like how it rhymes. I really enjoy it.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
that's the poem that will get picked out of all my poems because my poems it's about my experience. Um, Not so much as an immigrant, but of of the things I've been through, the pain I've suffered. Like they're traumatic writing poems. But the one about the race is going to get picked because that's what's fashionable, that's what's trending. And I don't like that because I'm like, pain is universal. Everyone feels it. Everyone is depressed at one time in their life, right? Everyone's been through something. Shouldn't those poems get recognized versus the one that's called The Brown Girl?
Yeah, I think, and this is something, um, I don't know if you know who Don Revelle is, but he's sort of famous poet. He was friends with Robert Creeley and Charles Olson, Denise Lebertov. He was my poetry instructor. And he, you know, people would always get upset with him because he would always say, like, I feel like the issue with literature now is people sort of make their identity this like vacuum. It's like you're not Hispanics, or you're not an immigrant, so you'll never know my experience. And it's like, he was always like, the best poetry, the best writing is always that writing that's like, you can write about being an immigrant, but it opens up. It opens up to like, you can understand the pain. It's the same thing with poems from Guantanamo.
Yeah.
I've never been in prison. I'm not Muslim. I've never been to the Middle East. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know anything about all of these things, but when I read these poems, even though they're talking about their personal experience, it's so universal. I can
Yeah.
understand the pain. I can feel the pain of like the longing to go home, the longing to see your wife, your child, your brothers, your sisters, right? And I think that's what makes the best art.
I think so because you can put yourself into these people's shoes. Because I wrote a poem just by reading Guantanamo. Like I was in Guantanamo. I'll read you a short snippet of it, and I started simple as I call to Allah the Merciful, hear me. Oh God, wash away the pain, the shame, the indignity. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. Their hearts are full of hatred. Their soul are still searching. They're incomplete as human. Shine your light on them. So it's kind of like I I'm not in Guantanamo, right? But I read that and these words are popped in my head and I'm writing them down and I'm like, well, why am I writing this? Because it's inspirational. Because it's human nature to want to feel and understanding pain. I mean, I don't know if it's making sense, but that's how I look at it.
No, I think it makes complete sense to me. I think the as any type of artist, the best artists appeal to the universal. It's like, why do people still listen to the Beatles? It's just because like they're talking about something that's, you know, or like Al Green's, for instance, Let's Stay Together, right? Came out what, 50 years ago now, and it's still like, I listen to that and I'm like, yeah, I feel this, like, you know, like I've been in a situation where I'm like, and I remember my dad when I was a kid. So like my dad only listens to classic rock. And I was like, why do you only listen? Like, why didn't you branch out? He was just like, you'll understand when you're older. And now that I'm older, you know, I listen to it now and I'm like, oh fuck, this is my life. Like, you know,
Yeah,
I don't want to do
yeah.
your dirty work, right? Like Steely Dan makes a lot of sense to me now.
Oh, that's so funny. Once you hit classic rock, there's no going back.
Yeah, it's
Like
just like,
it's the best thing ever.
it's so good. It's
You
so
know,
good. You're just
I
like,
call
yeah.
yeah, I get it. Sometimes when I play classic rock, like really, really high, you know, and then someone has to come knock on my door to like
Yeah.
turn that shit down. And
Yeah,
then
but
I open it and it's like the biggest shock on their face, right?
yeah.
Because they're confronted, like, what the hell? I thought I'm gonna go tell this middle-aged white guy, right? Or
Yeah.
biker to turn his music down, and then
Yeah.
someone else answered the door. And it's like, is that your
Uh-huh.
music? Yeah. Well, can you please turn it down? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean,
Right?
I've had the same experience. You know, I've been in bars, or like you know, at work, I'm the guy who plays music at work, and I'm like playing all this class. I'm playing Michael McDonald and Christopher
Mhm.
Cross, and it's like, oh, all these white guys, they love it. They're like, oh, you listen to this music? I'm like, yeah, dude, like it's awesome. I love Michael McDonald. You know, but is, you know, going back to the conversation, it speaks to the universality of the content, whether that's poetry or music or, you know,
Yeah.
prose or whatever. You know, there's a reason why we still read. I don't want to say we still read certain things because a lot of that's canon, but like
Mhm.
there's a reason why people still read. People read Paradise Lost,
Yeah.
teenagers, and they're like, I relate to this guy. Like, I understand this guy.
Yeah. Well, Dante is the shit. Pardon my French. I freaking love him. I think he rocks. So
Dante?
I mean Milton.
Oh, Milton. Yeah.
Milton
Yeah,
is
he's
like, I
fire.
think we had that conversation yesterday because I'm
Yeah.
like, I was telling Marina, like, I am going there. I'm going to hell. I'll see you there. And I'm going to be hanging out with Lucy because I call him Lucy. And I'm like, I'm going to be in Pandemonium and we're going to be chatting away, you know, because it's like,
It's awesome.
it's Satan
It's so
represents
cool.
us as human. It's that energy in us that they want us to curb. That's what Satan represents, right? And it's like,
Absolutely.
why should we curb it? But that's the same energy that's transmitted into art.
Absolutely. I mean, it's, dude, Satan's so fucking cool. You read it and you're like, yeah, this dude's right. Like, this dude, you know, he's wrong, but he's right. You know, it's like I was watching so I went through a really bad breakup a couple of years ago, and I was watching episode 3 of Star Wars. I don't know if you've ever seen have you ever seen that?
Excuse me.
Whatever.
You're being a typical American right now.
I know.
I gotta tell you.
I know. All right. So I was watching episode 3, and you know, my whole life I'd been like, you know, what's Anakin's train of logic? Like, how did he get here? And you know, this breakup was my fault, and I was like reflecting on it, and I was like, wow, that was stupid. So I'm watching episode 3, and I get to the end of it, and I was like, oh, I know exactly how he got it. Like, the train of logic, I was like, oh, I understand this 100% now. I know exactly what happened here. Right. And it's that,
Insecurities, right?
yeah, you're just, it's easy to misunderstand it when you haven't been through it. And then when you're through it, you're like, oh, I see where he went wrong. But it goes back to the universality of the best literature, the best anything is universal. You can look at it.
Yeah.
You can find yourself in it. You can be like, even if it's like, I've related to things that are completely fucking just, even with poems from Guantanamo. I'm not Muslim. Like I said, I'm not Muslim. I've never been to prison. I've never been in the middle. Like, I didn't even know really anything about Guantanamo. And I read these poems and I feel the humanness in all of it.
Well, Guantanamo is the pain is universal, right? And I wondered about that, because we all connect through pain, right?
Absolutely.
And it goes back to what I was talking about earlier in this conversation, maybe like an hour or so ago, about if someone were to read the Guantanamo poem, would they be able to get over words like Allah or Islam and see it for what it was, or would they get hung up with those words?
I think if someone gave it a full read through, I think they could. I think a lot of the problems in this country, and I'm sorry, Scott, this is like we're talking about things that like have nothing to do with anything. But I think a lot of the problems in this country are like, we're too focused on like the rhetoric of things, and it's like we don't focus enough on like, why does someone feel this way? Like, why does someone feel like Mexican people are coming here and taking their jobs? Like, why do they feel that way? Is it because that's actually happening? Which is not. Like, if you've ever applied for a job, like one of the first questions is, are you a legal resident? Can you provide evidence? You know what I'm saying? Like, if an immigrant's taking your job, if an illegal immigrant's taking your job, anybody could have taken your job. Like,
but here's the thing with that: illegal aliens, illegals, right? I don't know where this is going, what this recording is going, but no, I didn't mean it like that, like where it's going to go. I was illegal, right? I was an illegal alien. I live in this country in the shadows for 17 plus years as illegal.
Fuck. 17
right?
years?
I lived here. I was trafficked here. I came here young, right? Traffic, no recourse to me. A congresswoman, I reached out to a congresswoman to ask for help. She said, the best help I can give you is stay away from police station. Don't go do things normal teenagers do. And don't go to the airport.
Dude, that's fucked, because Congress people if your state governor grants you pardon.
She wasn't a governor. She was a senator.
But she knew the governor.
And so there was no help for me. So I had to live my life illegally. And let me tell you, illegal people are treated like trash. I am in academics because I do not want to be treated that way. Right? People, they con you. They don't pay you. They blackmail you. They treat you like you're not human. The way they talk to you is just disgusting. Okay? So no American is going to want to go clean a toilet. Even American with a record, they don't want to clean toilets. They don't want to mop floors. They don't want to get up at 3 a.m, go out in the snow and clean cars or walk to a gas station to pump gas. No American wants to do that. So what job are these people taking? Or no American wants to go in the hot, hot sun and pick apples or tomato for 5 cents a container. Which American want to do that?
None.
Right? And I'm getting mad now. And the other thing
justifiably,
is, you have companies that import illegal aliens here, because what happened is the Congress, United States government, pay private prison per bed for illegal aliens. So they keep them in there, they lock them up, and they get paid millions and millions of dollars. And you have schools and institutions and teachers and all these unions who invest, right, in these buildings, not knowing that they're locked up. People in there are in these private prisons are illegal. And they're getting treated horrible because these prisons get paid per bed. So every time a bed is filled, right, you get paid. That's a business, and a big business in this country. And no one talks about it. Anyway, sorry about that.
I feel like it's the backbone of this country. I feel like who grows our food? You know, who does clean our restrooms? Like, you know, who cooks even at DU, who's cooking that food? If you walk
it's a thing, right? I mean, go back to De La Rosa. Like, there was a quote in there, you know, where they call these detainees the enemy, and going back to Trump, like we brought him in this conversation, he called immigrants the enemy, right? And Trump has no respect for life or human rights, right? It's the same thing John McCain told Congress, because according to De La Rosa here, and I have this quote here, the enemy we fight has no respect for human life or human rights. They don't deserve our sympathy, but this isn't about who we are, it's about who they are. These words seems like they can come out of Trump's mouth just for immigrants. See how things are like mirror each other? I don't know, we were supposed to be talking about
absolutely
doc on doc.
No, I mean, no, I think this is this is what I wanted when we had this conversation. I know we're supposed to be talking about the text, and I think Scott would agree. I think Scott wants us to sort of, you know, talk about things more and just like, you know, think about our lives. Like, and I think this is interesting. I think it's interesting. And
we're either gonna get A or 2 over this.
dude, we've been talking for a long time.
We have been talking for like almost 2 hours.
I know, right? There's a lot to talk about. So if we're gonna go back to the text, if we go to page 68 of We Are Here.
Doc?
Yes. 68. We are here because you were there. You know, he's having this debate with someone, and he says immigration is a byproduct of globalization, and as such, it is irreversible. 1/3 of mankind now lives outside of our homeland and away from our original culture and language. His face was blank. I passed my hand over his face. The existing nation states are dysfunctional and outdated, and the legal structures that contain them do not respond to the new complexities of the times. His response to the answer was, I don't understand a word of what you were saying. The fact is that aliens are here illegally, right? So it's like, you know, I think what you were just talking about, sort of like, we've all had this argument with someone where they're just like, well, they're not here legally. And it's just like, you literally don't understand the fabric of your own society. And it goes back, I think, to what I was saying earlier. All of these people, they would rather go home. Like, if they felt like they had the same opportunities and the same safety in whatever country they came, they would be there. Why the fuck would they come here, where, like, when all of their family is still back home, the language, the main language that they speak is still back home, where, like, people don't treat them like shit because they're undocumented, or they speak Spanish, or they don't have the same. Why would they leave? That's like me leaving, you know, to go to, I don't know, Thailand or something, because you know what I'm saying? Like, why would I do that unless I felt like the opportunities there were better?
I have a good story for you. I'm gonna bring in a TV series in here. I watch a lot of British shows, and there's a show of this guy. He's from Syria, right? He's a refugee, and his family is separated they're separated. His family's in Germany and he's in Britain, right? So in Britain, you get a certain amount of money a month, right? So he's qualified for 37 pounds, right? And he's standing in line at, to get the money. And he's ashamed because he doesn't want to get the money. He wants a job, but he cannot work because he's a refugee, right? So there's this guy there, and he's taking the mickey out of him. Do you know what that means?
No.
He's making fun of him and saying derogatory remarks, right?
Okay.
And he's like, listen, I don't want this. I don't want to be here, right? I don't want to take this money, but I have no choice. And the guy's like, well, we're full, right? We're full. Go back to where you come from, right? So he took the money and he said, here, you take the money. I feel bad about this. And the man took the money for him. And there's this older man stood up and he said, son, take this. I am sorry that this happened to you. And he turned to this guy and he said, you are going to give me your money because I give him my money, right? And the man is like, no, I'm not going to give you my money. And he's like, how you're talking about the country full and you're being a racist and you're talking about the lost generation. Because anyway, my grandson, who's one of the lost generation you're talking about, is going to beat the shit out of you if you don't give me that money. And here comes this guy that looks like you, right? He's he's mixed, right?
Yeah.
And he goes, yeah, I'm not even going to ask. So this man is now, he's a bully, right? He has to give this refugee, this old man the money back. And the lesson is, the man turned to him and said, the reason you are here is the same reason I was there. Resources. He's like, I didn't understand why I was in Suez, but I was there. And now you are here. We're all connected in the story.
And I think, again, I think it's probably in the same place.
Yeah.
68. Just right. He says, gosh, where does he say it? The part where he said, oh, just as I became an immigrant one day, you yourself might become one in the future. We are all potential immigrants, right? I think that sort of encapsulates the sort of like, the guy was like, I understand where this guy's coming from because I was there, and like you might find yourself there one day, right?
Yeah, it's like I like this paragraph. He says, illegally, to me, immigration is not a legal issue, but a humanistic and ethical one. No human being is illegal, period. All humans being with or without document belong to humankind, our kind, and if they're required our help, we're obliged to provide it. It's called being human, the concept you may find quite alien. I love that line.
Yeah, I agree. I think he has so many good.
Yeah, like I love Gomez Peña's poem. His performance is what I have issue with. Going back to how could a picante drinking a bottle of spicy picante is a performance piece.
I'm not gonna lie, performance art is bad. It's just bad. Like, it's just straight up bad. Never good. It's never good. Never.
It makes me want to like try. I mean, I know we have to do like a presentation. I'm like, should I do a performance piece because I don't understand it? Maybe I should do something because I don't understand performance piece. But burning yourself with an iron?
It's at best cringy, and usually it's just like, dude, what are you doing? Like,
yeah, I call it flinch-worthy. I mean, I think that's what I was like when I wrote this down. I was like,
it's bad.
Yeah, I didn't like how it made me feel. I was like, this is flinch-worthy. I just
wait. Let me ask you this: what was Peña? Didn't we read one of his plays?
Yeah, Super Nintendo Ranchero.
Yeah. And so like, dude, performance art is just bad. You know, even drift, like I have a newfound respect for it.
Yeah.
But like like the sonic nature of it, it's not good. It's never, whenever there's literature mixed with like sonic quality, the music is not good. It's not pleasant to listen to. It, it's just it's just not. And like I feel bad because I'm like, I shouldn't be shitting on this, but I'm like, you should be better. Like you should just be better. Whatever you're doing, yeah,
Well,
I agree. Draining a bottle of hot sauce.
yeah.
I mean,
The thing
frat
about
boys do that as a fucking
yes, right. That's what
as a
I'm
fucking
saying.
pledge,
And
right?
frat boys burn themselves and stuff to get a laugh out of
Yeah,
things,
I'm like,
right?
what are you doing?
And I'm looking at it, and he had this like heart, right? And he's drinking out of it like he's, and it's blood, like he's drinking blood. And I'm like, okay, vampirism in what sense? What are you trying to say by showing this actions? Or like taking a scissors and trying cutting your throat and your tongue. I get that, even though I'm like, oh no, stop. But burning
bad.
yourself in drinking picante, and all you say, my favorite picante salsa, and you drink it, quote unquote. That's what he said, and he drank it, right? And then that's it. And I'm like, where's the social justice here?
All art should be beautiful. That's all art.
Okay, and I get that. Okay, maybe I'm not looking at his throat, how it's beautifully moving. I don't know, Anthony.
It's not beautiful. That's not beautiful. All art should be beautiful. I'm gonna go to the bathroom. I'll edit this out.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, so I do have a closing question, which I feel like is relevant to things Scott talks about in class. How do you, everything we've talked about, how do you see this relating to you in your work?
This class, or what we're learning, creative writing, and
your thesis, your life, your class,
well,
this class, whatever.
I see it relating to my thesis a lot, because one of the source he gave us, I mentioned early Caliban. Caliban talks about looking for that identity, and it plays into colonialism and how we as South Americans, Caribbean people from the Caribbean, look as colonialism, embody colonialism. And it's going to help me to ask the question, is post-colonialism even possible, right? So in that sense, it plays into a lot we're studying. But what will really help me is how I'll be able to write poetry, and the creative license taking this class will give me, because I've never thought of myself as being creative. And frankly, this class has scared me. When I first saw the first syllabus, I was like, oh my God, what did I do? But I love Scott because they had a tutorial with him. And
that's why I always look at you when he goes through the assignment descriptions. I'm like, she's fucking freaking out right now.
Yes, I was freaked out. I was freaked out. I was like, oh my God, no, like, what am I going to do? Like the presentation, like I have no clue. And then I run an idea by him, and he's like, Vanessa, you're writing for yourself. Like, you do what you want to do. And I'm like, I'm not used to people saying that to me. I'm used to people going like, this is what I want. Give me that. Right. Mm-hmm. So, and I've never find myself creative. And I think this class will help with that, because I write, but I don't share my writing.
Yeah, we know.
Shut up. Yeah, this class is forcing me. But you, same question to you. How will it help you in the future?
Yeah, I think so. So I'm going to bring in the Levertov and the Olson because, you know, poetry, obviously.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think if we're talking about the form that all of these things take, from Guantanamo to undock, drift, skins of Columbus, whatever, right? We can think of Olson's like form is an extension of content, and then we can think of Levertov's like form is a revelation of content. Like the content of the things dictated the form that these things took. And I specifically really lean toward Levertov, um, in the sense that like organic, right? She says organic poetry might be that it is a method of a perception of recognizing what we perceive based on an intuition of order, form beyond forms, in which forms partake, and of which man's creative works are analogies, resemblances, natural allegories, exploratory. 236, right? It's sort of like it almost reminds me of oh gosh, who's the guy that had these forms? Was it Plato?
Yeah, Plato
Right,
wrote in
Plato's
forms.
is
Yeah.
like his abstract forms, and it's like
Mhm.
you know, the thing, the output dictates the form doesn't dictate. I mean, the form sometimes does, but I feel like the thing that is created, right, tells you fuck me, tells you what it wants to be, right? It tells
Yeah.
you, it dictates what it needs to be.
Mhm.
um and I think this other quote, the condition of being a poet is that periodically such a cross section or constellation of
Mhm.
experiences demands or wakes in him, them, she, this demand, the poem, right? It's sort of when we experience an event, when we go through life, eventually we accumulate so much things that like a poem comes out of us. And that's how I know I'm speaking of poetry, because I'm a poet, right? And that's how poems are made for me. I experience things, and then I get to a point where it's like there are these things, there are these feelings I have to sort of write about. And I feel like the times I have writer's block, the times I can't create, or the times that I don't experience things, the times I just sit in my room all day. And eventually I have to be like, I have to just go out. I have to go out and I have to see people, and I have to feel things with people. Um, so I think that sort of relates to the form all of these things take, but also how these things relate to what I'm doing. Specifically with Olson, I think it's more scientific. I think it's more like
Yeah.
when he talks about like a poem is energy transferred from where the poet got it by way of the poem itself to all the way over to the reader, 174, right?
Yeah.
I think with all of these things, I think that's true. Like you feel what's happening, right? You have this, I fucked up my pop filter. You have this sort of emotion, like this is what's happening. It doesn't matter. This is what's happening in these works. And with poems, specifically with poems from Guantanamo, it's not just like these are the works, but like I feel the emotion that's happening in these works. I feel this energy, this longing, this despair, this sadness, this
Yeah.
hope is transferring to me.
I
So
I get where you're saying, and I hate to, and I want to add one thing to what you're saying there,
no,
and I know
please
it's
do.
to you, but she said that it seems to me that the absorption in language itself, the awareness of the world of multiple meaning revealed in sound, word, syntax, and entering into the world in the poem, as much of an experience of consolation or perception as the interest of nonverbal sensuous physical event. And it goes along the line of truth and another truth. And I like that because your experience that comes out in poetry, it won't be the same as my experience in poetry. Yet, if we read each other's work, we can connect. And I think that's magical.
I think that goes back to our conversation of universality,
Mhm.
right? I'm coming from my way into poetry, my way into art is different from yours.
Yeah.
And yet the goal is to make you understand, right? It's to make you understand, like, this is what I'm saying. And I feel it. Classic rock. Those
Yeah.
guys, those guys were in a completely different time period. Music was completely, like, everything was different. But we listened to
Hey,
it and we're like, yeah, I
yeah,
feel
it
that.
connects us. It's a manifestation of form, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I think we did it.
Yeah.
I think this is good.
So, what do we say to close? You're gonna have to edit. You have a lot of editing to do.
No, I only edit like 3. I'm not gonna edit this part. I think you know, I think we did a good job of sort of talking about all of our things, but I think we had some interesting conversations on the way, which I think
we did.
I think we had some honest conversations. So
it's good to be honest. And I knew with the two of us together in a room, that's what would happen, because we both have no filter. I think you have more of a filter than I do.
Really?
Well, you will think twice about hurting someone's feelings, where I would blurt it out and realize that I hurt their feelings later.
Yeah, true, but I'll also say crazy shit too.
Right? But I think I don't know how to read social cues. I think it's what I call it.
Sure.
Right? I can pick up on tension. Like, sure. Oh God, I hate tension. It makes me sick. So I could pick up on tension, but I don't know like what's gonna come out of my mouth next, because I don't think it's true.
I mean, I don't either. I'm ad-libbing, so I haven't thought about any of this.
So yeah, and then I realized after, oh yeah, I might mean it one way, but it means something to someone else, and then there's that whole uncomfortableness that I have to navigate and apologize for anyway.
Yeah, maybe I'm better at like in the moment being like, should I say this? Is
yes,
the right thing to say?
And I'm not. If you ask me if you're fat and you are, I will say yes, and then you're gonna punch me, because, and then I wouldn't understand why you're punching me, because to me, you asked me to tell you the truth, but that's not what you were asking. But that's what you asked, right? I don't like, again, I can't pick up on that.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. It doesn't matter. I think we did a good job.
Okay, good.
I think this is interesting. I think it's insightful. I think we talked about issues that came up in the readings, but I also think we talked about issues that sort of came up with us, like personally, things we've been talking about all year.
In life.
Yeah, in life. We've been talking about things that have been bothering us all of life. And I think that's what this exercise is.
And I think that's the point of this, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
To blend stuff that's happening, because I mean, this podcast is not critical, it's creative. And we blend our life with the reading, and
well, I think it's critical too, but yes, it's
yeah, somewhat. And hopefully no one cancels us.
I don't give a fuck if anyone. Who's gonna cancel? We're not important enough to cancel. To get canceled, you have to be important.
Yeah, but we're gonna get thrown out of the Black People Club.
I mean, if we're being honest, we were already out of the Black.
That's true.
We would have never been invited. All right. Well, let's end this. Let's end this recording. Vanessa, all right. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony.
And Scott, I hope that this was entertaining for you in some way. Yeah.
Yeah.